Yeah. Welcome members to the Scrutiny Committee Corporate Performance and Resources this evening. If I could just take some time to state some housekeeping issues for us this evening, if you don't mind, on behalf of the Chairman. This meeting is being live streamed and will be recorded also for archiving purposes. Except for members of the committee who wish to be seen on screen, would all present switch their cameras and microphones off until they're called by the Chairman to speak? Would all members switch their microphones off as well until they are called to speak, but obviously remain on screen? Should you wish to speak, would you please use the raise hand facility in Teams and/or use the chat facility if the raise hand facility is not working for any reason. But please, can you limit the use of the chat facility only to those issues so that we don't have comments being made in the chat facility, because the public won't be able to see those when this being live streamed. So all discussions we would prefer are actually made in the meeting during the consideration of the items. Should you have any technical difficulties at all, would you please contact the Democratic Services Officer separately for assistance? Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Karen. Okay, we now start to the formal business. Before I start, before we go through the agenda, just point out that we're going to move things around slightly because of number 5 will involve certain officers leaving. We're going to reverse that. So we're going to bring forward the scrutiny recommendation tracking and the annual work programme to number 5, and number 6 will then be the consideration of senior management structure in the council. But before we do that, we now need to go to the first item on the agenda, which is obviously any apologies. No, Chair, before that, it's appointment of vice chair. Sorry. Appointment of vice chair. I'm calling for nomination of appointment of vice chair, please.
I nominate Pam Drake, Chair.
Okay, and I second that. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Not I've indicated. So congratulations, Pam. You're now vice chair. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We now move to the second item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on now. Are you happy for me to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of April?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now we're going up to the new item 5, which will be scrutiny recommendations tracking proposed annual working programme. Karen, do you want to?
Yes, Chair. Happy to move to discuss that report. But could we just go to declarations of interest?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I forgot that as well. Any declaration of interest? No. No.
Thank you for that. Okay, then, with regard to the scrutiny recommendations and tracking report, this is the normal report we bring on a quarterly basis. And as you will see from the report, there are a number of appendices. The first appendices being the 4th quarter tracking January to March. And then obviously we've got the 3rd quarter and 4th quarters at Appendix B and C. If you would like me to go through, I'm happy to do so. But also, I'm just confirming with you, really, if you're happy to accept the actions that I've marked as completed and those that are ongoing, it's entirely up to you as members how you want to proceed with the discussions on those.
To any member on decision tracking? Are we happy to note them and the ones completed? Yeah, fine. Okay, we now move on to the forward work programme, Karen.
Yes, you will note from the report, Chair, that I've also included the Cabinet Annual Forward Work Programme so that all members can see what's coming forward for Cabinet, going forward. And the items then relevant to the Scrutiny Committee have been dovetailed into our Annual Forward Work Programme, and that is at Appendix E. And again, I've placed in here all the items that committee have either requested towards the end of the document where we haven't actually got a date scheduled for those items, and also the other items then that I've scheduled for the whole year that you can see on Appendix E. So again, it's over to the committee really to have your observations as to whether you want to make any amendments, whether you want to add any additional timescales, or whether you just want to formally approve and we can then upload to the website.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Karen. I think I'm just interested in progress of our annual welfare reform reports. It feels like quite a while since we last had one, and obviously the impact of the virus and various changes over the last couple of years is quite important. So I just want to flag up that I'd like to see that as soon as practical. Thank you, Chair.
I quite agree with you. Yeah.
Caris is on the call, Chair, if you want to have a word with Caris.
Caris, do you want to come in on that?
I'm happy to come in on that, Chair. Firstly, to apologise, Councillor Johnson is right. This one is late and come into committee. I am pulling one together now and I plan to get one into you for the June meeting of this committee. I think what I'm trying to do is make it a slightly fuller report than you normally have. I think there's a lot of contextual issues around this time round, which are probably far more important than they have been for previous reports. So it'll be more than just data, it'll be some contextual information as well about the way it's impacting both on the people who are now in receipt of benefits who may not have been before, but also the impact that it's having on our services as we're trying to support people. So if that's all right with you, Chair, I was going to suggest that it goes on to the agenda for the next meeting of this committee.
I think that'd be fine, because I think the June is not too heavy in terms of agenda items anyway, so I think we're okay for that. Councillor Johnson, do you want to respond back?
Yeah, very grateful for that. I just want to draw Caris's attention to a question that I submitted to full council, I think it was in March, which was regarding free school meals eligibility, and so I'd be interested in sort of updates on that from a Vale perspective as well. Obviously, the deputy leader gave a response at the time, but I think it's something that would be interesting to have in this context. Thank you.
So, are you happy for me to include that in this report?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Okay. Has anyone else got any comments at all, observations? No, I mean, apart from that change, then we're happy to agree to full programme. Good, excellent. Okay, we're now moving on now to the next item on the agenda, which is the senior management structure in the council. So I understand Neil, the leader, would like to present that initially.
Yes, thank you.
Followed by Tracy.
Chair, could I ask that we wait until people leave offices?
Yes, please. Fine. Yes. Thank you.
I was about to mention that, and Tracy will be staying to answer any questions if necessary. But I thought it was right and proper that at least I bring the report to you, and if I can answer the questions if you have any. If not, then I'm sure Tracy would be able to help.
Right.
Excuse me.
I think we're ready.
Yeah. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, basically the report is to consider the council's current management structure. Basically what happened was Cabinet is considered and agreed that delegated authority be given to the head of human resources in consultation with myself to formally appoint a consultant to undertake the review of the council's senior management arrangements, and that's really been set out in the body of the report. The other thing that we wanted to do, obviously, was to refer it to here as the major committee. But what the intention would be was, if we go forward, then the findings and the assessment of any recommendations to the changes to the senior management structure would come to another cabinet report. And hopefully what we want to try to do is to ensure that we can get something to council before the end of 2021. I would make the comment that before the report was taken, I did consult with the group leaders who agreed the proposals for going forward. So I didn't want it to come as a surprise, but basically, just to summarise some of the main reasons why we're thinking about doing this, is the current structure has been in place for about 6 years. It has had some slight modifications. In fairness, it has stood the test of time. But I think what we need to do is to reflect and consider the appropriateness going forward, particularly as lots of things are coming forward. We're having lots of duties placed upon us, like social economic duties. We've got the particular learning from COVID, obviously, especially as we transition out of it into the recovery phase. But but we also have to learn of new ways of working as a result of COVID. So I think we've learned a lot of lessons. I think we're going to have to change the way that we currently work. And I don't think anybody's going to be arguing against that. We also have put together recently the new corporate plan. That's been agreed recently, as has the annual delivery plan. You know that we've also agreed the climate change some time ago, and we've just recently put to council the Project Zero, which is a way forward, which is going to have a substantial amount of work. There's obviously continuing the reshaping services programme, the reshaping programme as we now call it. And all that added to that is we still have to do it during recovery in terms of the COVID pandemic. And clearly we don't know what's coming. We don't know whether there's going to be a third wave. You know, things have eased up a little, but whether or not there will be a backlash to that, only time will tell. So there is a need for the work to continue. It's going to have to continue slightly differently, and we have to continue to develop the organisation. And last but not least, really, is the other thing we have to remind ourselves of is the legislation, not least the Local Government and Election in Wales Act, which has got some profound effects and could have some profound effects on us, including things like the CJCs, the regional bodies which are going to be set up, which will obviously have to be addressed in a different way than the way we're currently doing it. So the report does set out some proposals to engage an independent consultant to assist in the undertaking the review, and there's a basic area in paragraph 2.4. So it does set out, as I said, something in brief. So if the report is agreed, and it was agreed by Cabinet, it's been referred here, and if you agree or if you have any comments, then they will go back to Cabinet with any subsequent recommendations that you may have. Then in terms of the next steps, the intention is to finalise a brief so we can commence that work. That work will involve discussion with the Cabinet, with group leaders, the strategic leadership team, and the directorate management teams to assess and consider the key issues for us as an organisation. Now, one thing I want to set in stall here is that this obviously in no way reflects on the management and the senior leadership that we have at the moment, because we have achieved a tremendous amount over the last couple of years. We are still one of the best performing, if not the best performing authority in Wales. That's not a mean achievement. And in order to do that, our management structure has to be stable and strong. But in fairness, the Local Government Wales Act imposes some things upon us. I think we have to reflect upon that. So simply, we need to assess how we can continue to develop, move forward, and really grasp the opportunity of building capacity and resilience wherever necessary. So in essence, what it is we're thinking it's been a long time since we reassessed this. Clearly, things have changed. We have to now have instead of non-managing director, we have to have a chief executive. We need to consider if our structures are right. It wouldn't have been right for us to do it ourselves. So we're recommending it's done independently, and it's likely that we'd be looking to see Solace to help us with that, because they have experience that can bring forward I think they've done some other restructures or considered structures in the past and fairly recently too for that. So basically, Mark, it's a case of we are solid, we are strong, but things are going to change, and we think we just need to review and refresh where we are in terms of our management structure. It is going to cost some money, obviously, and probably going to cost, I don't know, if consultants' fees are what, £750 a day, probably 10 days work or more, somewhere between £7,500 and £10,000 maybe. And then, I'm not predetermining anything. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to come out of it. but we'll obviously have to review the situation when they come back to us. We will consider those options, and they have to be options. But without going out and giving the opportunity to somebody to review it, then we have no options available to us other than to continue. I don't really want to say any more than that. I think I've probably said enough anyway. You're on mute. You're on mute, Mark. Mark, you're on mute.
Before I bring members in, I just want to, Tracy, do you want anything to say, to add at all?
Hi, thank you, Councillor Wilson. No, nothing further to add from me, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, I've got a few people that want to talk. First of all, I got Councillor Ian Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the leader for presenting that item. Thanks also for hosting a meeting with group leaders to in advance to explain. Obviously, that's appropriate because if we're making long-term changes, well, who knows who'll be running the council in 12 months' time. I was also able to attend the meeting of Cabinet where it was discussed as well. I think it's highly appropriate that at this time for the council to reconsider what its senior leadership and management team looks like. As I think the report says, the last full review was undertaken, I think back in 2012 under John Maitland-Evans, JME. That's nearly a decade ago. 2 elections have gone since then. A lot of water under the bridge, and also a lot of changes in the direction of local government in Wales. Back then we were considering whether there'd be mergers and larger units of organisation set up. We now, following the election a couple of weeks ago, we know where we stand. The legislation was in place before the election. That's been confirmed by the government there. So what the thing for me is that there's been such an increase in both digital working and in regional working, which comes from the corporate joint committees that the leader was referring to. Those are, create, big changes in how, how councils are operating and will operate in future. So it's appropriate to think of how we best deal with that. And I suspect there will always be some criticism of use of external consultants, but it's incredibly appropriate in this case because it would be inappropriate to ask our own senior management team to be discussing their own positions. So we have a situation where that is an independent oversight is appropriate, and we have to put that in the context of our turnover as a council, which is around £400 million a year. We have to have the most appropriate and the right structures that we can deliver the best services that we can, and that obviously is I'm sure a cross-party perspective. So I'm happy to support this and to I look forward to being involved in discussions when when the report comes back, when it goes to Cabinet, and when it comes back to us here and as group leaders as well. So I'm happy with that. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ian. George, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the leader for his presentation, and also echo Councillor Johnson's comments. It was very good of the leader to meet with other group leaders to explain the processes behind this. I agree with both the leader and Councillor Johnson on the appropriateness of using external consultants in this case. I think that occasionally there are issues where perhaps consultancy fees aren't the most appropriate use of resource, but in this case I think that it's absolutely right that we should get somebody independent to look at this. So I don't really have much more to add other than to thank the leader for the approach that's been taken so far, and hope that that collaborative approach will continue as we move forward with this, because we do have legislative options, and I think that now is an appropriate time, as others have mentioned, with regard to looking at the wider structures of the authority.
Okay, I've got questions. Tracy's putting in the chat whether she can leave, and I've got questions to ask as well. All right, there's a few questions I want to ask about this process. Obviously, First issue is time. Yeah. And what sort of time span are we looking at, first of all?
Well, basically, we're looking to do it as quickly as we can. But what we're looking to see is if we can agree this now, we'll go back to Cabinet, and we'll be we've been scoping some independent experts, and as I said, Solis probably would be the one we'll go forward with. We're looking to do a scoping scheme of about 10 days or more. We would hope that we'd be able to get something back by July. If not, we can always call a cabinet in August. But what I really want to do is to get this battened down before the end of the year. So I'm hoping if we can get it to the September council, then if we can do that, great. If we can't, it has to go to the December one. But I definitely don't want it to go any further than that. So it is a case of doing things quickly, but not cutting corners. Let's put it that way. So as far as I'm concerned, if we can get the consultants to come back by the end of July and take it to a cabinet meeting, if necessary, as I said, it's not unusual for us to have a cabinet meeting in August anyway, and we can do that, if not the beginning of September, but obviously try to get it through the process to get it there before the end of the year. And I'd hope we can get it before the December council meeting, but I'm not saying never. But that's kind of the timescale I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you for that. I got a second question.
The reason, sorry, Mark, the reason for that is because if we do that, what we need to do is to bed it in before we get to the elections.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it needs to be in place and bedded down before the next administration comes into place.
My second question, I got 3 questions. My second question is really about the methodology of it. Obviously, one of the issues is are other councils doing this?
Yes.
Are we? They are.
Well, I don't know whether all other councils are doing it, but what you have to remember is that we have 1 or 2 in Wales and have a managing director. Yeah. The rest are chief executives anyway, so that puts a bit of a slant on things anyway. Because if you recall, when we did this originally, and Ian made the point, goes back to the previous chief executive's time when we changed it to the managing director. Now, in those circumstances, what happened was the managing director that took place, if you recall, was within the corporate management structure of the corporate bit of the authority, was the director of finance. So basically, they became a managing director of the resources, and the others were going forward. Subsequent to that, we've had a change, and currently Rob's managing director, but he kept his own portfolio, and he's taken on, to be honest, the resources bit as well. And I don't know whether that's sustainable or not, but that's something for them to look at. So that's the scoping of the report. I don't know whether others in Wales are doing it. I would have thought that the other one that's got a managing director probably might consider it. I haven't discussed it with other leaders because I think we're in a slightly different position to others. I know that Solis has actually carried out management structures recently in other authorities, but not in Wales, but in England. So they have a track record and they have some experience of doing it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fine. It probably leads to my next question. My final question is really about a bit more about the methodology process in terms of obviously best practice benchmarking going on as well, because I think bringing in Solis and as an umbrella body is great, but obviously looking at benchmarking to other, not just to England, but maybe other countries which have different systems, but nevertheless we can learn from. I think maybe we could look at that. Again,
that is the reason why we want to go to an independent body, because they have the experience of doing it elsewhere. So I would have thought the benchmarking would have been part of their normal procedure anyway.
Yes.
And if it isn't, it should be. Because okay, we're local government, and local government is slightly different in England and Wales, but it's still local government. And if they have experience to benchmark something similar to us, then I would expect them to do that. I think I think that's just normal practice, and that's the reason we want to go independent, because it isn't, and it isn't somewhere for example, another authority in Wales. We're asking another authority in Wales to do it. We're asking somebody totally independent. I don't know if Tracy's still on, if she got any comments to make.
I just got a final question.
Go on.
In that case, just really with this process continuing.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, will the consultants be interviewing certain senior councillors in this respect as well, just to get their views about where it's gone, what it's like now, and what they envisage going forward, perhaps?
I would expect so. As I said, the situation is obviously going to be including the, as I said earlier on, it's going to include the reflection of our managers, of our senior leaders, and what we've done in the past. So yeah, I would expect the work to involve cabinet, the group leaders, the strategic leadership team, directorate management teams, and so on. So I would expect them to not be isolationist. I would expect them to come in and have some idea of how we run, because let's be fair, we have been very successful. So one of the things I don't want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater, for example. But yeah, we part of the process will always include interviews or discussions with senior members and officials in the organisation. I think that goes again. I think that goes without saying. I don't know. Again, I don't know if Tracy wants to make any comment. I think she's still with us.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. Thanks, Leader. Yeah, no further comments really, Councillor Wilson, other than to say it was always our intention to ensure that the scope of the consultant would mean that they would interview as wide an audience as possible to gather as broader information as possible into the scope and also the recommendations that were moved forward. It was always the intention that the report would look at benchmarking, and as I said, one of the reasons we've tentatively gone to Solace at the moment is because we were aware that they've done similar exercises with other local authorities, predominantly in England, but they do have some exposure and experience, and obviously depending on what will come from the Scrutiny report today, we'll probably look to discussing that with them further. So
thank you for that.
And the intention is throughout the process that we will have feedback anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Neil, I mean, before I get Ian to come in for a moment, I mean, I do feel that this is a very serious process and it's a very important process to get this right. Yeah. And I would like it to come back to corporate resources before it goes to consideration to council.
It will. Obviously, the intention is to get a report back to cabinet. That report would then come to scrutiny, come back to cabinet, if not straight then to council. But it will. It's not going to be there in ether. You will see it.
Thank you. Okay, Ian, do you want to come in before I bring in Tracy?
Was just a very quick point about ensuring their, I'm sure Tracy will be doing it, but ensuring their competence and knowledge on the distinct Welsh areas, because obviously as we've said, the leader said at the start of this discussion, part of this is driven by the new legislation. So obviously ensuring that is all covered is going to be a core part of what they do, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the important point here is looking at things like the equality duties and the things that we've got, which is specifically, as you rightly said, a Welsh dimension, which I think is very important. And also future generations, 5 ways of working. I think all that's got to be part of it. Tracy, do you want to come in now?
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, I was going to make 2 points. One is that we were going to ensure that any consultant that we looked at appointing would be familiar with, or if not familiar with, it was cognizant of the Welsh side of what we're looking at, so that they weren't fundamentally completely removed or distracted from it. The second point I just wish to make as well was just to make you aware that we have already consulted with our trade union colleagues on this to make them aware of where we are with it. They are also comfortable, and will continue to keep them fully informed and abreast at every stage. So I just felt that was important to highlight.
I think that's an important point. I'm just going to ask you a question on that since you brought that up. Will the report go to JCF as well?
Yeah, it's likely to, once we've got the recommendations back in, Councillor Wilson, and I think they would probably ask that of us as well. Okay. We have discussed it as part of our change management forum with the reps and also the full-time reps of the region as well, so they are fully informed and cognizant of what we're doing and are supportive of it.
Good, excellent. Okay, does anyone got any other comments to make?
Can I make one other comment?
Yeah,
in terms of Solace, don't forget, Solace doesn't just cover English chief executives and things. It covers the whole of the UK, so that, you know, that they are going to be they are going to realise that there are some differences in the way that the devolved nations work in that way. Okay.
All right. Thank you for that point. Okay. Are we happy to note this and move the and take the points on to Cabinet for their consideration? Tracy, do you want to come in again?
No, I'm just going to leave now, Councillor Wilson, if that's okay, before it goes any further.
No, I think that's fine. I don't think we've got any other members who are indicating, so that's absolutely fine.
Can I clarify, Chair, that for the Cabinet agenda for next week, it's going back as a reference. Can I just clarify that obviously one of the recommendations, or is there a recommendation you want to make that, although the leader has said it will come back to corporate resources, is that what you want to make? So there's a formal recommendation going back.
If you, we anticipated that it would come back to Cabinet next Monday. But if you note the report, then to be honest, we can get on with the work.
Yeah, I understand that.
So if you note it, then the cabinet recommendation becomes endorsed.
Yeah.
And we can get on with it as of today.
Yeah, and also we make that recommendation that it will go to a future corporate resources scrutiny meeting in the future.
Yeah, but if you note it now, then that means that we can carry on with it, but it will be reported back to Cabinet on Monday anyway.
So
but I'll give you the assurance. It is definitely going to come back to scrutiny. There's no way anybody would get away with that. But come on, be fair.
That's all I wanted to check.
Well, it'll be in the minutes anyway. That's all right.
That's all I wanted to check. That if the report is noted, we wouldn't formally do a reference, and obviously the leader's given you assurance now. So in that case, I will just note that the report has been noted tonight by Corporate Resources.
Absolutely fine. Okay, I've got no other matters which are urgent under part 1. I've got no items under part 2. The meeting is closed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Take care.
Okay.